So it turns out I'm a messy, messy boy. I have a lot of scrap plywood sitting over here against this wall, and it's a huge mess, and I need to do something to organize it. Now in this shop, I'm a little bit more pressed for space. We just have this kind of like roughly 5-foot section between two large tools. That means we have to take all of this stuff out just to get a sheet of material. So I think we can do better. We have to get a rack here. Now, John made a suggestion that was really good about a swing out version. Now, I made a swing out version of a plywood rack that was horizontal way back in Arizona, but we can't do that here, just not enough room. But why not do one that's vertical? And that will allow us to swing out, have easy access to all the sheet goods, and a great place to store all the stuff. And it will actually take up a lot less space in terms of footprint. Ironically, to make a plywood storage cart, we need more plywood. Now, when it comes to buying plywood, you don't have to buy the most expensive stuff, especially for shop furniture. What you should look for will be under the name shop grade or maybe even paint grade. So the way I cut these down, I just throw insulation boards on the floor. I find it easiest to work where gravity isn't fighting me. Cut everything down. I use a track saw. You could certainly use just a circular saw. And I like to use a track square because it's important for me to get at least one square corner for all of these cuts. Now, I like to use the table saw for this second round of cuts because I can get repeatability here. I also can take that square corner and use that as the basis for 2 more cuts to make sure the other edges are square. You can do all this with a circular saw, kind of on the floor like I did before. You just gotta be more careful with it. This also will be one of the very few times you'll see me wear gloves around my power tools, and I'm only doing it because on large pieces, it gives me a better grip, and as long as I'm not near the blade, it actually does make the operation safer.
How's that bow looking? Pretty nice, huh?
And one thing you have to think about with plywood is the fact that it's usually under dimension. So if it's called 3/4, it's probably a little bit under that. So if you have a piece, and it's kind of hard to explain, but if a piece is going to go up against another piece of plywood, and we know that full length was 48, we would think, okay, we cut it to 47 1/4, but because plywood isn't exactly 3/4 of an inch, that number won't be right. So let's not think about numbers. Let's actually use a cutoff here, because I know this piece needs to be shorter by the thickness of a piece of plywood. So I'm just going to use the same stop with this little piece in here, just kind of as a little shim, and that should result in a cut that's absolutely perfect length. And that was totally all my idea. So I'm going to still cut it to that number, but we'll just know later we might have to trim the piece slightly to fit.
Well, I was just thinking, why don't you just throw on a cutoff, take up that space, and then you got your cut.
Now to assemble this thing, we're going to keep it as simple as possible. I'm just going to use screws and countersunk pre-drilled holes. So let me show you some of the gear that I've got here. Just a couple of test pieces. This little countersink bit is fantastic because we can make a pilot hole, but then also a nice countersink where the screw head goes below the surface. Just like that. Now what can happen sometimes is even though we've pre-drilled the first piece, as you drive that screw into your second piece, you could sometimes split and it will actually separate the layers of the plywood. So what I did was I just grabbed a couple of screws, drove them into the side and several times just to make sure that this material is soft enough that it gives way and doesn't cause a split to happen. And it actually looks pretty good. So now we just need to make a line of pre-drilled holes along our work pieces, and that'll help us with the assembly. Now there are probably a number of ways we could strategize this assembly, but this one makes the most sense to me. We're gonna do a couple of sub-assemblies. So we'll take the back, Take the side strip, the bottoms, put that all together, and then we can bring another sub-assembly in, drop it in place, drive our screws, put glue in there, and then finally cap it off with the front. Now to make sure these screws are in the right place, we're gonna use a piece of scrap to just draw a line everywhere we need a line of screws. And this way we can eyeball, try to find that center point so we get a dead center drill mark. So I'm just gonna take the piece of scrap right to my edge, nice small pencil line like this. And then it's pretty easy to eyeball with your drill when you're at center. Boom. Now I'm gonna pre-drill probably about every 6 to 8 inches. Now we're gonna do this whole assembly here. Hopefully you've got a nice wide surface to work on the floor, if not. And of course I have my back piece and my bottom piece in place. That's gonna hold this piece up, but you'll probably need a third and maybe a fourth piece for extra support over here, just to keep this panel nice and flat. So all I'm gonna do is put a bead of glue right on this edge. Now the screws really are enough for this. The glue is just kind of a belt and suspenders sort of thing. And I'm gonna do one side at a time, right? I'm doing the back first and then the bottom. Get this guy lined up. Start driving some screws. Too much movement and you see what happens. This is your fault somehow, John.
I blame Chum-Lee.
It's Chum-Lee's fault. Just get the first one. That's all I need. Now with that sub-assembly flipped over, we can add the back, and it's nice this way because everything stays flush on the back end there. Just gonna put some glue on here. Now you can use glue and screws, glue and brads, or just use glue and clamp it up. And go take a lunch break. And by the way, because this is just going through 2 pieces of the face grain plywood, you can't be very long, right? So these are only 1.25 inch screws. Don't want them to poke through. So now we've got our front panel on the assembly table here, and I have my other 3 connecting pieces. This is not the face that they're gonna go on. We're just putting them here so we could draw our lines. These actually get screwed on to the other face. So just like before, I need some pencil lines so I know where to pre-drill. I do have another extra piece for balance here. I'll start with this back piece and just work my way around. Come on, sucker. Trying to balance myself but keep my head out of the view. That's the what we call the broken ankle move. It's all that yoga paying off. So now we're going to bring our 2 halves together. We have a nice little convenient ledge to drop the other piece in on, and we'll have another support piece over there to take some of that weight off. I'm just going to run a bead of glue right along here and along this edge. I have pre-drilled in the places where I know I'm going to need screws, so right along this edge here, and I have a couple of screws on the bottom. Drop this in place. Clamps, use them wherever you need them. Starting to get heavy. All right, so the last piece to go on is just this front panel, and I've pre-drilled around the perimeter. We're just gonna add some glue, drop it in place. Done! Now, inevitably, where you have surfaces that meet each other, you're just gonna have some areas where it's a little bit proud. This is just a shop plywood project, so give it a good sanding and flatten it out. Now, the last thing we need to do to the cart itself is add some casters because we want it to swing out and to be nice and stable. I've got 3 already attached. These are just simple 3-inch casters, really nothing special. We're gonna attach these to the bottom. And this is part of the reason why I wanted a double layer of plywood here, because we need support for the screws and we need a lot of bite to make sure that these don't fall off. So, easiest way to install them. These don't have to be like perfectly located or anything. I'm just gonna make some circles here to show where I need to drill. I like to get them all started first before sending them all the way home. Boom, baby. There it is. Ugh. This is where we're going to have to actually anchor our hinges into. Now, if you have a situation like this, maybe a lower footer in your garage, and then you have a setback like this, you're probably going to want to brace some, I don't know, 2x4 material, something to build it out a little bit so that you can attach your hinges appropriately. But for us, we're just going to put 2 hinges into the concrete, and I want to lay them out now so I know where they go. Put one right about here. We're going to attach it to the plywood first. Jump down to the bottom. I don't know, that looks pretty good. Just eyeballing it. So I'm just gonna line it up so that this part of the hinge is flush with the back. That puts the barrel here behind our rack and just creates a little bit of a gap. And my concrete wall, it's kind of goofy. There's some stuff that sticks out from the surface, so I need a little bit of wiggle room there. Okay, so once that's lined up, I will mark my locations. Now we can pre-drill. Found a little void there, lovely. I'm not drilling too deep because I want these screws to have a nice bite. I'll do the one that went off course last. So now we have the whole thing up against this concrete wall, and we're gonna mark the locations for our holes. This is actually looking pretty stable, so I think we may luck out here. To attach screws to concrete, it's not as simple as wood. You have to pre-drill a hole and you have to use special screws. These are TapCons screws that are designed for masonry. And it's a 1/4 inch screw, so I'm gonna use a 3/16 bit, so it has a little bit of something to bite into. This is a masonry bit designed for this purpose, and also a hammer drill that's designed for sending bits through masonry. So let's put on some hearing and some lung protection, because this is bad stuff to breathe. Bad on the ears.
Only have to do that 7 more times.
All right, we'll bring the whole rack over, try to line it up with our holes. Now, why'd that happen, John?
Shouldn't have.
Shouldn't have happened, especially if we used the right size pilot hole.
Just snapped?
Yeah. So TapCons can kiss my ass because we broke way too many, but I want to redo it because I'm not going to let it defeat me. I want to make sure that we have at least more than, I mean, I got 2 in the bottom. I don't think that's enough. I really want to have at least 3. So we're going to try this again, but this is what happens when a woodworker plays with masonry. Things don't always go well. But we'll get back to the TapCons in a minute. We do have some things we've learned that we were kind of unsure about how they would pan out. So when you rotate this guy around, in my previous version of this, when I made a long, wide one, the rear here at the pivot point, I didn't include casters. I kind of forgot about that, because if you look, it's all going around a pivot point. Those are kind of unnecessary, and they might actually get hung up because they have to make such a tight turn. So we could probably remove those casters, but I think the bigger issue is right here at the front. My floor is either out of level or the wall is not plumb. One or the other results in a gap under these casters. So we definitely do not want weight to push down on them until they touch. Something would flex on the other side. So one solution that we thought about, I use this on my back gate in the backyard, is one of these gate casters. It's spring loaded, so we can actually use this to help support the end. And what's nice about it is it sort of follows the contours of the floor and still provides, some relief from that weight. right, so I just scooted over about an inch. Thankfully, we have enough room to accommodate that. Let's get this away so we can take those casters off. I'll tell you, sometimes it's like the simplest projects that should be easy are the biggest pain in my butt. All right, so TapCons Take 2. A few things I did differently here. First of all, I made the hole a lot deeper. What may have happened is using the recommended, I believe it's about 1/4 inch deeper than the length of the screw. Using that method means that if you don't get all of the dust out, as this thing grinds its way in and a little bit of dust is already in place, you kind of pack that into the back of the hole, and then when you hit that with the tip of this screw, it's got nowhere to go. So I made sure that I not only vacuumed everything out, but I hit it with a little compressed air and also made the hole a lot deeper. The other thing we're gonna do is use shorter screws. I mean, this connection is pretty secure. So I went with a slightly shorter screw here so it doesn't even have as far to go. And the third thing we're gonna do is use a little bit of screw lube, some wax on the screw. I don't know if that will work, but it seems logical. Maybe it'll help. And finally, we're also going to put them in by hand. No power tools for this. I think that's going to give us the best results. All right, I'm just going to cinch these down. Somehow, I got all of them in there, but a little bit of a learning curve here with these TapCons. TapCons, more like CrapCons. This is probably all my fault, so what are you going to do? But that's done. All right, so here's this gate hinge. I have the whole rack pretty much as far out as it's gonna go, and I've got my gap on my wheels, you know, at the highest point. So I'm just gonna press down, and that's about the spot that I wanna anchor my bolts through. So this way, even in this position, there's always some tension that's helping to support the weight. Just gonna take a bolt, shove that guy through here, right through the hole, and then I have a nut and a washer on the other side. And once you start hearing a little wood crackle, that's how you know you're there. All right, so it's clear that as we go this way, the spring is becoming a little more compressed, but it's not so strong that it's lifting this up, you know, and bringing these casters really high off the floor. So I think this might be good. We really just need to load this down to see what the effect is going to be. Oh, dude, we didn't move the shelf. Darn it! Always something. Stupid shelf. So the finishing touch will be a handle, of course optional, but this will make life a little bit easier. Get in there. All right, moment of truth. Let's see if this thing breaks. Yay! All right, so really, we're gonna have to see how this holds up over time. We're gonna be watching the hinges. We're gonna be looking to see if things pull out. You know, as it pertains to that wheel, the spring on that wheel is not really strong. So I don't know how much pressure it's actually taking on, but everything helps at this point. We've got a good amount of material on here. That's a lot of weight that this thing has to withstand, and so far so good. There it is, a plywood rack. And I gotta tell you, this whole thing looks so much better because it's so much more organized. We have all this extra space for fun activities. So there's that. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoy this project. If you build one, let me know about it. I want to see what changes you might make to it. Thanks for watching. Now, to assemble this thing, we're going as simple. Woochie mama. It's so hot in here. There's nothing better than making your name longer than it has to be. It's like the anti-nickname. T-O-double-D. And I hope this is better because this is a lot of stupid work for this thing, so. Boy, if this video doesn't show the gaps in my knowledge base, I don't know what does.